So I want to welcome everyone in. For those of you who either haven't been here in a while, which is all of us, we typically take the summer off from these chapter chats, or if this is your first ever, I will tell you that we do record these. We then cut the video into something that makes it easier to watch, and we post it on our community forums so that if you thought that there was a really great point and you want someone on your team to watch a certain segment of it, or if you want to go back and listen again to some of the guidance, you will be able to have access. Typically, we get people who register, and at the last minute, something comes up. And so we do make that available whether you have registered or not. And give us about a week. It takes a little bit of time. And I will say, right now, the global team, even if I had air conditioning, I'd probably still be perspiring a little bit because we have been working really hard all summer to deliver some brand new resources your way. So, if you have not visited impact100global.org, that's our website. If you have not visited that website lately, it is not going to look familiar to you. We have completely rebuilt it. It is much more clear. When you get to that homepage, you might see yourself in the video that plays on the hero section at the top of the homepage. We've added a video, and that homepage says, what's your path to impact? Do you want to understand about Impact 100 Global? Do you want to learn about the model? Or do you want to go out and find information about a chapter? We have mega menus. That's a dictionary term we had to learn as we were building this, so that we have deep and wide information. We have testimonials. We have grantee stories. We have your stories. And so we really hope that this website opens all new doors for you to connect with each other, to learn best practices. Now, that build alone was a pretty heavy lift. We had excellent partners, and the functionality is everything we'd hoped it would be. But we are also currently in the home stretch of reimagining Impact Manager. Impact Manager was introduced in 2019 when we were getting ready to have our first or our last conference in Pensacola. So in 2019, we released Impact Manager. For those of you who have used it, it provides good information if you like reading, because it's only reading. It's all you can do is get in there and read and read and read some more. And one of the first things that I ask new chapter leaders to do is go on in there and read Impact Manager and create a list of questions, because I'm sure that your questions will not have been fully answered. Well, we are replacing Impact Manager. This will happen in October. So coming soon. Impact Manager is still attached to our new website, but soon we will be updated to Global Connect. And Global Connect, it's a reimagining of Impact Manager with so many more assets and so many more resources for you. So instead of what we called Impact Manager, the training, we're rolling out Impact 100 Academy. What you'll find when we go live is 14 or 15 courses. Each course has video content. How about that? You don't have to just read. So there are things on the screen. If you're a visual learner, it's still there, but it'll be audio. I hope you like the sound of my voice, because I open every single course with a video, and then you will hear me do voiceover of the content. Each of those courses has several lessons, And there are specific materials and resources that are tied to each course. Now, to get a little taste of what the Academy is going to be like, you can take an ungated course on our website. So if you go to chapters, Haley or Lori, work with me.
I'll
It's
grab
like
the
ungated
link.
course.
It's on the global page, but let me get the link and I can just put it right here in the chat.
Okay, yeah, we have
Oh,
an
I'm
ungated, yeah, I think it's on the chapters.
on the model page.
It's on the model. Okay, see? We got a lot of pages. So Haley will put it in a link in the chat, but you can go through, not on this call, please, but you can go through and take one of those courses and you'll see a couple of downloadable resources at the end. Global Connect is also a dashboard that celebrates your chapter and
Oh,
all of the leaders who are going in and learning alongside you. We're reimagining in Manager. We had community forums, and it was basically one big discussion board. And if you asked about membership today and grants tomorrow and financial management the next day, and then we throw a chapter chat in, and then you go back to something else, it was like this one big long chat. Well, we will actually have forums dedicated to different subject matters. And so when you're looking for information about anything to do with membership or anything to do with grants and so forth, you will be able to subscribe to those forums just as you can now, as well as ask questions, give guidance, and share resources. We have built an incredibly large resource materials library. However, we are confident that when you go in and start playing around, you're going to say, huh, this is good, but do you have one of these? Or, hey, I have one of those that you should be sharing with the bigger group. So there will be opportunities for you to both share your documents and your best practices, as well as request additional information. You can do it all through Global Connect. Now, we're expecting that it will launch in October and it will launch prior to the other really big project we've been working on, and that is the 2025 Impact 100 Global Conference. I'm very happy to see Renee and Nancy, and of course, Lori and Haley. I'm trying to make sure I don't skip anyone from the conference committee, but we have had a very hardworking team pulling together what is, without a doubt, our best conference yet. Now, I will tell you that the the setting is second to none. If you go to our page that talks about the global conference, we have been live streaming the live cam from the Miramar Hotel. So if you need a little beach view wherever you are, the Hilton, which is our host location, is ready to be there and ready for us to be there and showing you the beautiful day that we will experience in a little while. September 26th is a really important day. And so if you've been on the fence saying, I'd like to go to the conference, but I don't know if it'll work with my calendar, or am I allowed to go to the conference? Yes, you're allowed to go to the conference. You're encouraged to go to the conference. We only do these every other year. And what we hear universally is that it is the best thing we do. And I can tell you that this year is no exception. It is extraordinary. For keynote speakers, so our theme is the tides of Impact 100: renew, recharge, and rise. And that thread will be carried through everything we do. So you'll get information on all the tactical things that you need to effectively run your Impact 100 chapter. Or if you're not a leader, you might be a past leader, you might be a future leader, you are invited. You will hear from experts from around the globe. We have, in addition to our United States attendees, we have two international chapters that are going, and possibly a third that is still sorting out the details. We have 42 chapters represented in our current registration. And when you think about the fact that we have 75 chapters ish, we've got well over half of them showing up. So it's a great opportunity for you to network and learn from each other. We will, in addition to all the tactical things, we're also going to be talking about self care. We're going to be talking about the fact that you can't pour from an empty cup. So, how do you take care of yourself um, as you're taking care of the rest of the world? Now, and one of the questions that came in advance was, when are we releasing the agenda? Great question. It is the number one job that our committee is working on right now. We need to finalize, the entire agenda is set. The tricky part though is that it was set with placeholder names of sessions. And until our leaders jump in and say, oh, I'm not really calling myself my session the fun thing about money. I'm calling myself financial stewardship. Well, we want to make sure that when we share it with the world, it is the title and the abstract that our presenters want us to present. Famous people alert. There is Major General Jeannie Leavitt was the very first female fighter pilot ever in the history of the Air Force. She is one of our keynotes. Ruthie Bolton, two-time gold medal Olympic athlete in basketball. The SEC has done a documentary on her. She is a survivor and encourager of all survivors of domestic violence. Here you've got this strong, fast, powerful, capable woman who herself experienced domestic violence and now helps women and girls everywhere to own their strength, and that it is not anything that would be reflected on you as the target of that abuse, and so much more. Yes, I will speak. Yes, you will get a deep dive on the Academy. You will learn all kinds of things at one of our sessions. You'll learn marketing and branding and technology. You will learn communication, earned versus paid. There are all kinds of things. You'll also learn what your personality style is and what that means in relation with the other people that you work with all the time. So those are my big announcements. And now hopefully you will look forward to when the announcement of the Academy comes. September 26th is when our room block ends for the conference. So please, if you are coming and you have not reserved your room, please reserve your room and get the incredible rate that they've given us. And if you have not decided yet whether you're going, please join us, and then please make sure that you're getting your room booked. Deep breath. Um, Lori Haley, you're going to keep me in line if I don't say, okay, so far so good. Good, thank you. We got a lot of questions today. And it's really interesting for all of the sessions leading up to our summer break. It was like 80% membership, 20% everything else. This is a turning point, y'all. Maybe this is the unofficial start of fall, because we have way more questions regarding grants management, grants process, annual meetings, etc. And so I am going to begin as I always do. I will be answering your questions. In some cases, multiple people ask similar questions, and so I'm sort of lumping them in together. So if you don't hear the exact language of your question, I am trying to keep them all together. That said, when we're ready to move on from grants, if your question has not been properly asked, I'm going to invite you to please ask it. So what it, there was a lot of questions about grant reporting from active grants and reporting and as a follow-up to grants that have already been fully deployed. The key to all of that reporting is in creating a customized grant agreement. And so when your members vote and they choose to award a grant to an organization that's going to convert a vehicle into a mobile fresh produce food bank, with that, they provided you a budget. They provided you with general timing of when it was going to happen. And so when you're writing your grant agreements, you should not have a one size fits all. Oh no, everybody has to agree to our grant agreement. That's not what we want to do. What we want to do is work with our grantees. Some chapters say that they have to spend the money within 24 months. Some chapters say they have to spend the money within 36 months. We can talk about the pros and cons of how long you allow them to spend that grant money. But when you enter into the grant agreement, both sides should agree that it is fair and reasonable, that it is aligned with the budget projections and applications submitted by the nonprofit, as well as the checks and balances that we require on this side. Now, the meat and potatoes of every grant agreement are those things. What they need to provide, okay, we found the vehicle, it's this much money, and they request that much money, they $30,000 goes to buy the vehicle. And then they get it into the place that's going to turn it into whatever it's going to be turned into. And you might pay that in steps, and then you get the wrap and you get the shelving and all the finals, and ultimately you pay it out. So the meat and potatoes of the agreement has to do with your grant, but it also has to do with reporting from the beginning of not just yes, we're buying this and yes, we're installing that, but continued reporting when it's deployed. How you want to look at measures of the impact. How many meals are served, or how many individuals, or how much produce in pounds that would have gone to the landfill now are not going. So think about the project and think about the measurable data that you will want, because your members, they really want to know my $1,000 turned into $124,000 and it bought this van, but what does that actually mean to my community? And so you again work with a nonprofit to say, let's start measuring. You also want to include in those grant agreements a mutual understanding about press releases, marketing, sharing, and that if any time, let's say that you've given away 3 grants in that year, that every time one of your grantees talks about their grant and what they're doing, that they mention this boilerplate about your chapter, that you would provide to them, or that they list that, the main story can be about them, but we were one of 3, and Agency A and Agency C also were recipients of a grant from this Impact 100 chapter. When the grant money is fully extended and that van is in process, that's not the end of the relationship. And so some chapters will use kind of an open-ended thing at the end of their grant agreement saying, once phase 1 is complete and both parties are happy, we will extend the conversation about reporting. We talk about our grants and how we vote for them based on two lenses. Is it transformational and is it sustainable? The transformation, it happens early, but because it's sustainable, it continues. And so just when they're finished spending your grant does not mean that their reporting is over. We still want to know that that vehicle is on the road, 4 years later, 5 years later, 10 years later. As long as it is still making an impact, you want them to continue reporting to you. In most cases, nonprofits can reapply a certain period after they've spent all your grant money. And so, if they have already been a grantee, your members will be interested if 5 years later they apply for another grant. In their mind, they're going to say, oh, yeah, we funded them a while ago and they did great things. So, it is a benefit to the nonprofits to keep reporting, and it's definitely a benefit to both your telling your impact story as well as your members really understanding the power of a transformational and sustainable grant. So I'm going to pause. Any thoughts, questions, feedback? Anybody have a great grant agreement that they love, or a question, comment? Okay. I'm not seeing y'all. Don't be shy now, but we definitely have a lot of other grant related questions. So um don't worry. We have another question, and it talks about the processes for requiring receipts and wording in that grant agreement to indicate what our requirements are. And that's sort of the next level down in the deep dive of these grant agreements. There are um, definitely, you want receipts. You definitely want the invoices. Again, it's going to be tailored to exactly how they're going to spend. It when you assign your grant liaison for that particular grant, you're going to want her to go out and make a site visit. I mean, if they say, if it's reasonable, if you have any question, if for whatever reason some things can be complex and you don't necessarily get the receipts, what I want you to imagine when you're writing these grant agreements is, what would keep me up at night with this grant? In other words, what do I want to see? What evidence do I need in order to make this grant? The second grant that ever came out of Cincinnati, y'all are very familiar because you have all heard the story of the McMicken Dental Clinic. And that was on the far extreme of, they showed us the order for 5 dental chairs. We wrote a check for $123,000. They bought them, and then we got to come and look at them. It was the fastest deployment. Year 2 for Cincinnati, however, went in the other direction. We gave away what I believe is still the largest grant ever given away by an Impact 100 chapter, and it was $184,000. And what this did is, in these buildings that were owned by a nonprofit called Tender Mercies, it provided permanent housing for people with mental and physical disabilities. And so these apartments didn't have their own kitchen, but they had kitchens down the hall, and they had common rooms. And our grant was to bring these buildings, their common areas and their kitchens, up to code, to allow for a safer and better environment for the residents to be able to take care of their own needs and meet with other residents. It was multiple buildings, multiple floors, multiple projects within a project. And because it was so big and it was so much money, it was going to take a minute to get all of these things done. And so in the grant agreement and in the practice thereafter, yes, receipts were required. Photographs are also required. You definitely want that evidence, but because there were different buildings that were all benefiting, they also set up a regular cadence of site visits because it's it's like so many small projects built into one giant project. We felt we wanted our finger on the pulse of where that money is going. Remember that you're not doing these things as a symbol that you don't trust your grantee. You wouldn't have voted for them if you didn't trust them. What you're doing, though, is you're protecting both sides of the story. And you're able to then, for a project so big, share with the members. Because at that point in Cincinnati, we'd given away one grant to McMicken and we'd given away the second grant. And McMicken, they got instant gratification. Look, here it is. But with Tender Mercies, they didn't. And so having photographs and having stories, it really helped keep the members engaged in those things. And so you really want to think through those things, and you want to take care in creating these grant agreements to kind of anticipate, hey, this is not going to be easy, or it's not going to be quick, or it's not going to be pretty for a long time. And so those kinds of details, really, you're showing that it helps us to help them, and it keeps everyone's paperwork tidy, which is the best place for any grantor grantee relationship to start. Anybody have best practices or thoughts about requiring receipts, making site visits, requiring photographs, timelines, any of that? We would love to hear from you.
Is it all receipts?
Um, that's going to be a personal question. It's a great question. I think you can decide based on the project. In other words, is it all receipts over a certain threshold, like all receipts over $100, all receipts over $1,000, or flat out all receipts, but that you only need them in batches of $100, $500, $1,000, whatever. We have to do what's reasonable based on the project itself. And I think and what they predict reasonable timeline will be for making those expenditures. But certainly if they've asked for a draw and you've given them $20,000 and now they're asking you for another draw, you're going to want to know how they spent that $20,000. You're going to want those receipts before you give them the next draw. Does it have to add up exactly to $20,000? Ideally, yes. But it could be a lumped together office supplies with 12 receipts that total $200 or whatever it is. But you want to be able to say with confidence to your members that we manage this process and we know that every dollar that we extended in grant money has been accounted for with receipts. And it can be hard to shortcut that. Great question, though. Thank you. Other questions about documentation? Okay. Now, hold on. There's more. Okay. Now there is a question, and Kathy, I just saw you join. Kathy, we're going to have to talk separately about the government funding that you talked about in your question. But what I'm going to do is talk about generally keeping financial assets separate. You, as an Impact 100 chapter, you're going to want a separate account that is your grant money. Now, some chapters have a 2025 grant account checking account. They have a 24 grant account checking account. They have a 23, depending on how long until you spend all of that money. But you want to keep each year, if not separate in its own checking account, certainly allocated by class in QuickBooks and in your banking. But generally speaking, grant money should be separate from operating money. Your operating money, those are your Friends of Impact, those are sponsorships, those are if you ask members to be 110% member, or if you link on an extra amount for administration. If someone writes you a check for $1,100, $1,000 goes into your grant account and $100 goes into your admin or your operating account. And throughout the year, you want to keep those separate. This speaks to further that you will also want to make sure that you've got financial checks and balances. You don't want any one person getting the money in, recording which members have joined, and depositing it in the bank. Maybe your membership person gets the mail, if people are mailing in your checks, gets the mail and says, and sends pictures. Here we got 5 renewing members or 10 renewing members with their checks. Then those get handed off to the treasurer or whoever does your financial management to actually record and make the deposit. But the more you separate out those duties, the more protection you provide to your chapter and to the hardworking volunteers on your leadership team. And so you do want to always make sure that those things are held separately. Questions about that? Okay. I'm going to shift a little bit. We're still kind of in the grants department, but we have multiple questions about rank voting and how to vote and how to do it and why we do it and what happens when. And so I'm going to, well, let me look. If Haley and Lori, if I missed anything on grants, questions that I didn't specifically address, let me know. But I'm going to go to voting while you double check me, please. So the reason that we do rank voting, so let's go back to the beginning. If you're giving away anything less than 5 grants, you want your members to rank vote. Now, there are lots of different kinds of rank voting. So I'm going to be very clear that when I say rank voting, what I am saying is you will have 5 finalists, because until you give away 5 grants, you're only going to have 5 finalists. And so when each of those finalists, you've read the executive summary, you've heard them tell the story, you are ready to cast your ballot. You want to look at those 5 finalists and you want to decide, which one do I think is the most deserving of all? If I only had 1 grant to give, which one would I give it to? And that gets your number 1. That's your first choice. And then you go through and you say, okay, my second choice is this, and my third choice is that, until you get all the way to 5. I fully understand that sometimes it's really hard. You don't know which one's first, second, or third, but out of these 5, you think these 3 should get it. And if those 2 don't get it, you'll be able to sleep at night, but these are the 3 you really hope. Well, the reason that you rank vote is that it avoids a tie. It is statistically, I hate to say statistically impossible, so I'm going to say it's statistically virtually impossible. It is the closest thing to impossible that we have, that you will not get a tie vote. Because if you're giving away in that scenario, you're giving away 3 grants, you've got 5 finalists. And let's just say that your third runner up has the same score. And so this CPA group in the back is tallying your votes or however you do it. And then you've got 2 that have the same score. Well, in order to determine, you go in and you say, of those 2, which one had the most number ones, which one had the most number twos, and you take it that way. And that is how you determine which one of those bottom of the 3 that you're giving away is actually your third recipient, and how much remains, which one remains a finalist. Obviously, we often use the phrase, everyone votes and the highest vote getter wins. When you rank vote, technically, the lowest vote getter wins, because you want all the ones will end up getting a grant. Someone who had all twos will end up getting a grant. And whether you do it through a voting app or you do it another way, you want to make sure that you are setting the calculation correctly. And even with voting apps, we often recommend having a CPA group take a look at your voting to make sure. I'm going to tell you a story just so that it never happens to you. There was a chapter, it's a number of years ago now, there was a chapter and they were going to give away 3 grants. And they had 5 finalists. And for the first time, they were rolling out electronic voting. And so at the annual awards celebration, they announced, everybody voted, they did their thing. They announced their 3 recipients. They were handed big checks, big photo op. All the guests go home, and the leadership team gets together and they realize that the app had screwed it up. And in fact, that was not what the members had voted for. And so the leadership team was able to scramble. They got a donation, believe it or not, of the same amount that each of these 3, because they couldn't take back their grant. They didn't feel like that was right. They couldn't not give the vote getters the grant. And a family foundation wrote them a check to cover the last 2. And by the time members woke up in the morning, there was an email saying, hey, we had a glitch. They didn't go into the details. We had a glitch. And based on the generosity of the Jones family, all 5 of our finalists are getting these checks. It was the best possible solution to a very difficult problem. But that's why I say, even if you use these apps, make sure before the votes are tallied and before the system spits out your answers, make sure that it is calculating the correct way. But rank voting is very effective. Now I'm gonna pause. Hi, Kimberly.
Hi. So I asked about ranked voting. That's something we're considering moving to next year, and we just hit our 5 grant milestone. So what do you think about moving it, for larger number of grants? And by the way, I've heard you've told me that story before, and it does keep me up at night. So um, I want to avoid that scenario, under any circumstances. And so ranked
Yeah.
voting scares me a little bit, because the other one is it's just easier to understand, and it's clearer to explain to the membership. Although I think a lot of them are getting, hearing more about ranked voting too. So it might be a good time to move them to it.
So here's the thing. You all are giving away 5 grants this year, right?
That's our hope. We gave away 5 last year.
Okay, so when you give away 5, you don't rank vote. And the reason is, once you get to 5 grants, this is where you need more finalists, because when you get to 5 grants, you need 2 finalists in every category. And in that case, you will listen to the first focus area, the 2 finalists, and you'll vote for one of those 2. And then you'll go to the next focus area and you'll vote for one of those 2 and the next, and so on. When you get to 1,000, so let's say you get to 800, we've got Jane from Sarasota. They give away 8 grants. You still have 10 finalists. And what happens is, in that case, you vote for your number 1 in each of those 5 focus areas. And then you look at the 3 focus areas in this case, because they're giving away 5 grants. So, or excuse me, 8 grants. You select 3 of the focus areas that you want fully funded, and you check those 3. So only then you would stay at 10 finalists, 2 in each focus area, all the way until you get to 1,000 members. Once you get to 1,000 members, you need 3 finalists in each of your 5 categories. Members go through and vote for 2 of the 3 across the board. When you're Pensacola and you have 1,242 members this year, once you have given away, or once you've selected 2 of the 3 in all 5 categories, you then will pick the 2 categories that you want fully funded. And that is how it works. So what that means, and I say this a lot, it's critical that you are doing an amazing job attracting strong nonprofits to apply for your grants, because, my goal for every chapter is that you get to 500 plus members, because when you get to 500 plus members, you fund one big grant in each of those 5 focus areas. But as you grow, if you're growing your membership and you're not growing the field of nonprofit applicants, you're going to find yourself in a very sticky situation where it will be difficult to get members to renew if they didn't feel like their vote counted when it was time to give the money away. And so you really have to be as active attracting nonprofit applicants as you are in attracting and renewing members.
So in this situation, I mean, we're working very hard to increase our nonprofits, and we're letting people come back sooner to reapply, things like that in our area. But if we're not quite there at the 10 with 2 in each area, like last year, I think we had 7 or 8 finalists. You would still not recommend ranked voting?
The problem with ranked voting is that your members, and I know y'all recently adopted the 5 focus areas too, but our 5 focus areas are there so that every nonprofit's mission will qualify for a grant, because there are women in your community that care about their community, that want to be a part of your chapter, but their passion might be arts and culture or environment. And it doesn't matter where you live, arts and culture and environment grants tend to happen once you get to 400 and 500 members. And so my concern with rank voting and only having 7 or 8 is that if I have been a member of your chapter waiting for the day that we fund the things that I am interested in, and rank voting does not allow that, I think it backfires for you. Now, yeah, it just backfires for you. And that's where part of what we do now with applicants is we ask them to rank the 5 focus areas in terms of most relevant to them to least relevant to them. And then we tell them that they will be put in one of their top 3 choices. and that you'll find out which focus area you're in by the focus area committee chair. And so that allows, there are certain organizations that just don't want to say their environment, or they don't want to say their arts and culture because they don't think they're going to get funded in those categories. As long as they put them in the top 3, you have the ability to sort of help. But it means actively engaging your members who care about those 2 areas and say, look, we need strong applicants in each one of these focus areas. You'll get them in health and wellness, you'll get them in education, and you'll get them in family. You've got to really push for them in those other 2. And it will be worth it.
Thank you.
Okay.
There is an additional
Oh.
question that has come up from previously. We covered all the grants, but there was an additional question that has come up in terms of chapters considerations around unrestricted grants and project-based grants.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Actually, the question,
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Barbara. Whoops. Nope. You got to unmute yourself.
sorry,
You had it.
it
There you
was, unrestricted versus project-based.
Okay. Yes. Thank you. Generally speaking, Impact 100 grants are generally project-based. They are generally with those 2 lenses of transformation and sustainability. It's why we do these $100,000 grants. There are chapters who choose to give more unrestricted grants. The difficulty, it's too early to know what that will do to your membership, but unrestricted grants by its nature, they don't have a lot of accountability from that recipient. I mean, the recipient will say, we spend it on operating, or we spend it on salaries, or we spend it on whatever. I just don't know. I would be very cautious about doing that. What I would say is that we also have chapters that, although we talk about every increment of 100 members, we give away another grant. We do have chapters. So like Cincinnati was 124,000 or 123,000 in one grant. And then we did the whole 184,000. If I had that second year to do again, I probably would have divided it in half and given away 2 grants, but be that as it may. We do have chapters, however, who take the overage, the extra, if you have 330 members and they take 30,000 and they do something different with it. My personal advice is that unrestricted grants should be something that your entire membership has to agree to, and be very specific about how you deploy it. Now more than ever, nonprofits need the support. And so it's a little bit like some of the COVID pivots that happened. It was like, there are things we have to do because we're a part of this community and because this is how our membership feels. But generally speaking, I know we have chapters who give those grants, and I know we have chapters who will never give those grants. My personal opinion is, if you really feel like you have to give an unrestricted grant, don't make it a big one, make it a smaller one. That's my guidance. And I think long term, that's what's going to keep our members engaged. We're very close to the end of our time. I do want to pivot to a couple of membership things. There was a question about accepting monthly payments or quarterly payments or what have you for membership in order to make it more accessible, and how it actually gets done. There were included in this, in one or more of the question, were questions about Member Leap, who uses it. And Lori or Haley is going to put in the chat a tech survey that Impact 100 Global did, and it gives you a list of everyone who reported that survey and what CRM platform they use. MemberLeap being one of them. When it comes to your monthly payments, it has to be driven by the member and what you want, because there are chapters that allow monthly payments 12 months out of the year. And the idea is every month, $100 comes out of someone's account, which basically means in 10 months, you've got your $1,000. In 11 months, you've got your $1,100. And in 12 months, in theory, you're starting to pay for next year's membership, or maybe you're, depending on how the math works. We want to make clear to our monthly givers or our quarterly givers that they are welcome to stretch out their membership payments for as long as they want. However, in order for your membership to count that year, it has to be paid in full by a certain date, and that it is their responsibility and not your responsibility to make sure that their member payments have been fully funded. Now, we all know that your membership teams are going to be reaching out to those women who are hovering at $800 or $900 and you're getting close to the deadline. But what you don't want is to have a member say that it was somehow our fault and they want their money back, or that we let them down in some way. And so, but I do find regular payments. I know in our rural Missouri chapters, they do it all the time and have done it from the beginning. And it has made membership accessible. But, Metro Detroit started doing it at least 5 or 8 years ago. And there are clever names like Member for Life, because the idea is when you get in the recurring habit of making that donation, you get to the point where you're prepaying your next year. I'm seeing a lot of advertisements for promoting women who join, and they say, if you want to make a monthly payment, your monthly payments would only be $83 if you pay by this day, or your monthly payments would be $272 if you take care of it in over the next X number of months. And so providing the math, encouraging them to make it as accessible as they can, all of those things matter. And it helps us to make sure that we have a diversity of membership in terms of their economic status as well as their lived experiences. And so we want to make it simple. This dovetails into Evergreen membership, which is a membership that basically says, hey, I'm in until I tell you otherwise. A membership Evergreen that says, I'm in until I tell you otherwise. If I have not funded my membership, I am still going to give the membership committee angst. I'm still going to give the board angst. I cannot tell you how many chapters I've talked with that say, we have 185 Evergreen members and, 50 of them didn't renew. It's like, well, or 12 of them didn't renew. And oftentimes the member believes, hey, I signed on the dotted line. I thought you were going to take the money. And you're saying, we could never take the money. So set up systems that can ACH out of a deposit account, agree that you'll send an invoice and that you'll take the money on an agreed upon schedule every year. Give yourself the tools, build it so that it serves the purpose that both the member and the organization agree to. And so, but I think it's a very accessible way to do it. A Little Traverse Bay, they recruit members 12 months a year. And it's been very fruitful for them. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of events. they're doing all the work of the chapter. Their membership cutoff is what it is. In their case, it's December 31st, but they make their big reveal on on January 1st. So they have no hesitation between the deadline and when they announce their members. And if you missed it on January 1st, then you make your payment on January 10th. You're one of the first members for the next giving year, and off they go. And so you know your community, you know what works, you know how to make it accessible. And the key is clear and frequent communication, systems that support what you believe everyone is agreeing to. Anyone whose question did not get answered, please send us an email and we're happy to do it. We've got a couple of more chapter chats coming up. I will say I did have one more question. So we got that. We did not get to the corporate sponsorship question. We did not get to the collaborative workspaces. But we will send those answers to the group. We have our chapter chats scheduled for the rest of the year. Coming in 2026, we will still be doing open forum chapter chats, but those of you who've been around for a while might remember that we also do subject specific chats, and we'll be reintroducing those this coming up year in 2026. So we might have a chat just about membership, all things membership, just about all things grants. We also may have some special interests, like we may have a chapter chat just on the Academy so that you all know how to do it, or we may have a chapter chat from subject matter experts. And so if you have an idea for a topic for a chapter chat, if you have an idea for presenter and you say, if you do one just on events, I've got some great people who should be a part of that. We welcome your ideas, we welcome your input, and we welcome you co-presenting alongside us in 2026. And so hopefully this will get your juices flowing. Thank you for all that you do in your local communities, all the ways that you support each other and that you support the nonprofits we serve. I am excited to see many of you in October. If you're on the fence, let this be your personal invitation from me to say, I want to see you there. I want to be able to look in the whites of your eyes and give you a hug and ask you how you're doing and learn about the cool stuff that's happening. The only way I get these stories to tell is when you share them. And so please join us. And thank you for being here today. And with that, our time is up. Our next chapter chat is October 19th, I'm guessing. I caught you off guard, didn't I? All right, well, whatever the next chapter chat is,
October
you'll
9th.
get the announcement. Oh, October 9th. Oh yeah, it couldn't be 19th. We're going to be practically on our way to the conference. Okay. Thank you all again. Take good care and enjoy the rest of your day.